Welcome to our session tonight. It is February 12th. This is session number 6. We're going to be talking about insurance planning and risk management. We're going to do a little bit of the review for the midterm, and I'm going to repeat a few things. Welcome, Tom. Please let me know if you can hear everything. I'm traveling unexpectedly on business. I thought I had brought the quizzes with me, but I didn't. So if anybody has questions on the quizzes, email them to me, and then I will email a response to everybody sometime tomorrow or Friday morning. That's number 1. If anybody has any questions on quizzes 1, 2, or 3, and 4 should be about completed, again, just email that. If you have any questions on the content, including time value of money, either text me, email me, and I will get you the answers prior to the midterm. The time value of money worksheet, I've been checking them in as they come in. I think I have 3 or 4 of them right now. And I've been responding by sending you an email with the answers. I'm checking them in and making sure that you've done at least 80 to 85% of the problems. I'm not checking each answer at this moment. I will later. The other thing I'll tell you is it's only an assignment that you're not getting graded, you're getting checked in on doing it. In terms of the midterm, it's a 50-question, multiple choice exam. You will have until Monday noon on the 24th to go through it. That's giving you 2 full weekends. We're doing that because taking the class twice in the same week might not give you enough time to do it. And in all honesty, did somebody try to, I think somebody's trying to get in via a teleconference. So in all honesty, if there is an issue with the midterm, it should be up tomorrow. If it's not early in the morning, it'll probably be up by noon, and you have till noon on the 24th. And then you will turn it in online, it'll be graded, and then after the 24th, we'll go over it. The midterm will cover some material from Monday's session. So I don't see any questions coming in for me. So before I go to the PowerPoints again, I want to ask if there's any questions you need answered, anything specific regarding the course we've covered so far, the quizzes or the midterm. Okay, someone says it's already online. That's great. Oh, good idea, Nurdu. If you need to print things out, whether the quizzes or the time value of money, I did some checking. You should not be printing directly from the content section. You should download it to your computer or your Dropbox and then print from there, because if you're trying to go right out of content, it doesn't always do it right. I do believe you should be able to print the midterm before you actually put in the answers. Okay. I'm going to start with the information tonight. I'd like a check mark. Do you find it more beneficial when I try to break it up into 45-minute units? Or so here's the question. Should I continue to stop every 45 minutes or so and take a short break so that people want to listen to different parts of it, they can adjust their time a little better, or does it not matter? So if you like it the way it is, give me a check mark. If it doesn't matter, give me an X. Boy, that's fast. Okay, then I'm going to continue to do what I just have started doing. Is I'm going to try to stop in about 45 minutes. So tonight we're talking about insurance planning, risk management, risk exposure, and you're going to be needing the Vaughan book and a little bit of the Mohn book. So the real question is, what is risk? What is risk? Well, it says here, risk is a condition that has a potential for loss. Risk is a condition that has a potential for loss. So, such as if you own a home, you can have a damage to the property, you can have financial loss. If you're employed, you can have unemployment. You can start a business, playing sports. There's even risks that you know, being a CFP practitioner. And if you think about it, the question is, you know, what really is risk? And it's something that you will need to understand the definitions between what is a risk, and if you're a compliance officer or you're doing compliance stuff for securities, one of the things you have to be aware of is when they discuss risk as an investments, it's always the opportunity or the risk of losing money. It's never the opportunity to make money. So risk is always looked at from the compliance officer's point of view as a negative. A peril, and this is one of the definitions you need to understand, is the term peril. And a peril is the cause of a loss. And just so you know, on the comprehensive exam and on your midterm and so forth, you're not going to be getting questions asking you for a definition. You're going to be getting questions that say, what is this? So they're going to give you a series of things, or all of these are examples of a peril or a hazard, except. So perils are something that causes a loss like fire, windstorm, theft, collision, disability. Your insurance is designed to cover the economic loss of a peril, if there is one. It's not always designed to cover anything but economic losses. And what you also should be aware of is, we're going to talk more about perils in week 10, but you need to understand the difference between a hazard, which is defined as a condition that may create a loss, or a peril, which is the proximate cause of a loss. So living next to the ocean or a riverbank, not taking care of your car, working around hazardous equipment, having your workroom right near where you have a lot of paints and solvents right near your hot water heater that's gas controlled, those are all perils and or hazards. Now, if you look in the textbook, the Vaughan textbook, you're going to see there's a thing called a physical hazard. A physical hazard is what physical properties will increase the chance of a loss from that peril. A wood frame home, building next to a river, using flammables, using paints near heaters. Well, living in a forest would all cause a physical peril to your property. A moral hazard is the probability of a loss that is increased due to the fact that some people are dishonest. And they're going to try to get everything they can and rearrange things so they can work it out the way they want. So a dishonest person will try to defraud the insurance company in the hope of collecting more than they should. You know, your car's stolen and all of a sudden you remember that you had a $2,000 set of golf clubs in your automobile. Now, the reason I'm using this as an example, ladies and gentlemen, is my car was stolen, and a friend of mine said, you know, I just bought some golf clubs. You want the receipt? They can never make out the name if you make a photocopy. And I said, no, that's not what I'm looking to do. Well, I'm not trying to sound like goody two-shoes, but I just didn't think it was the right thing to do. A morale hazard says what? Juries may have a greater inclination to award a higher amount of money because we have insurance. So it's the mean, rotten insurance company that's going to pay the claim. What people don't or fail to look at is the mean, rotten insurance companies that are paying the claim ultimately send those premiums back to the people paying the premiums. When I think of hazards, when I think of a risk, I'm reminded of a story that was on TV under the Alfred Hitchcock Presents in the late 1950s, early 1960s, called A Man from the South. They actually had the same story with two different shows. One was a young man going through the desert driving on Route 66 in a Jeep. He pulls into a town to get some gas, and there's a big sign that says air conditioning. You know, it was basically what we would call a sports bar today. He goes into the sports bar, leaving his car parked right next to a brand new shiny Cadillac, at a time when Cadillacs were the premier car you wanted to own. And he starts a conversation with the gentleman at the bar, and they decide they're going to make some bets. And the gentleman basically is setting them up for some bets. And he says, do you want to try betting on this? Do you want to try betting on that? And little by little, what happened was he pulls out his hunting knife, sticks it in the bar, and says, how would you like to wager my brand new, shiny, air-conditioned, automatic transmission Cadillac for your Jeep? And the young man says, well, maybe, but what do you need to do? And he takes out, the man took out the hunting knife and said, well, you have to get this lighter. It's an old Zippo lighter. It was very prevalent in the 40s, in World War II, Korea, and into the 50s and 60s. Get this lighter to light 10 times in a row with one flick of the ball there, or the little knob. And if it lights 10 times in a row, the car is yours. If it doesn't, I'm going to cut off your little finger. How many people want to bet? Anybody? Well, I don't see any answers or takers, which is what I probably assumed would happen. So if nobody wants to bet, what happened was, and I'm going to go through this very quickly, it's a half-hour TV show. They had all kinds of commercials. They had them, it was black and white. They had the music that was always playing. And he goes through the first 9 times. They keep breaking for commercials to build the suspense. And then at the very last second, after he's lit it 9 times in a row, somebody comes in, a woman, and yells, stop. And she says, is that old coot trying to get you to bet for this car? And he wants you to light the lighter 10 times in a row. And he says, yeah, how did you know? And she puts up her hands, and she has deformed or cut off many of her fingers and pieces of her fingers. Now, quite frankly, I think that's more risk than most people want to take. But I'm always reminded when I start discussing the program tonight on what's risk, it says a condition that carries the potential loss exposure. Well, that's a pretty extreme thing to go through for that risk. Insurance looks at paying claims on defined risks and on named hazards, for hazards that are covered with named perils or open peril. And this is all based upon what's called the law of large numbers. The law of large numbers says we need lots and lots of independent events to be able to quantify what is the amount of risk we're taking so we can add a premium to it, and that's what you're going to pay. So it says as the number of independent units increase, the likelihood increases that the results will mirror what our projections are. So if the only people driving a 2014, pick a car, I don't care, a 2014 Cadillac CTS are the people in our room, the premium is going to be pretty high because it's like a $60,000 car. It's going to be a high premium in the event we need to replace it. If we have 100,000 or 200,000 or 500,000 people driving those kind of cars at all at the same age, they can quantify a little more of how much it's going to cost for the similar risk exposures. In the life insurance world, it's called what is your mortality rate or your life expectancy. In the health insurance, it's morbidity, or how often you're going to become sick or disabled. The law of large numbers works in property casualty, based upon how many units we can get that are buildings that are wood frame, that are brick, that are fake brick, and where they're located. The law of large numbers is the basis for how insurance premiums are determined. Morbidity will focus on health and disability. Mortality statistics will focus on life expectancy. Insurable risks have to have 5 elements. They have to have a sufficient number of homogeneous exposure units to make the loss reasonable and predictable. That's why we have actuaries. We have to have, the risk must be measurable. That means you can't say, if something happens to my car, I want a new car. We have to define what kind of car you want. We have to have a dollar amount. It has to be quantifiable. The risk must be accidental. The insurance company will pay claims for legitimate risks, but it's not as though we want to just say to the insurance company, always make this claim. Because if there's not a risk that they won't have to pay the claim, they're not going to want the loss, because they're going to have to charge too much. So there has to be some element of risk. Otherwise, you have to pay 100+% for everything you own. It says here, it must not be catastrophic. We used to have a test question that talked about catastrophic risk, and people would assume it's always them. Now, let's be honest. If a loved one, a spouse, a child, mother, father, aunt, uncle, if a loved one is died, terminal or very sick, or your house is destroyed in a fire, that's a situation that's catastrophic to you, but not to the insurance company. You don't want a situation that's catastrophic to the insurance company, because that means the insurance company won't be able to pay the claim if there's a loss. So I want my insurance company to be profitable. I want them to be making money. I want them to stay in business. I want to know that if there is a need for me to have a claim, they have the wherewithal to pay the claim. Self-insurance typically is for large businesses, for large risks, and it could be for health insurance under the old system. I'm not sure what will happen under the Affordable Care Act. It could be the U.S. government's fleet of automobiles or FedEx's fleet of trucks. They probably self-insure the thousands of trucks they have. It could be different things that they're saying, we're willing to retain that risk in-house. We're going to set up a reserve fund or a sinking fund, and we may even buy some additional umbrella insurance in the event that happens so we can monitor our claims. There are certain advantages to self-insurance. We don't have to pay profits to the insurance companies. We don't have to pay fees for sales or to develop the business. We don't have to worry about the overhead of the insurance company or paying any taxes. But the other thing is, we get to keep the money in-house for short-term interest rates that we control, but we also then have to look about the disadvantages. We're saving money on one hand, but on the other hand, we have to set up reserves. We have to set up third-party administrators and let them handle the claims. We have to make sure that we don't have to worry about paying taxes, but we can't, the money we're putting aside isn't deductible to the business until we spend it, where the insurance premium is a deduction to the business. We may have, again, get partially funded or get what's called an umbrella policy for the exposure over and above what we want to carry. And sometimes employees become angry at the employers if they feel that, I don't know what just happened here, people. Hold on a second. All of a sudden, my slides got very small. So give me a second to reload this, please. So the disadvantage to the employees, quite frankly, is that sometimes they don't know what's happening, and sometimes the company will not be able to manage it properly. Why won't this open? Okay, there it is. I think I got it back. Okay, so how do you manage risk? There are certain stages in managing risk that will mirror the stages of the financial planning process. And I'm not going to go through each one of these, except to say you have to establish the relationship and decide what your objectives are. That's step number one. Step number two, gather the relevant data, depending on what you're trying to monitor. Are we looking at life insurance needs, the risk of a teenage driver, the risk of being disabled? What are we trying to do? And we have to gather data accordingly. After we gather the data, we have to analyze the data and come up with a risk management program or profile and how we can solve it. After we've analyzed it, we develop our plan. That's how we solve it. Then you know we're going to implement the plan. And then we're going to monitor the plan on an ongoing basis. And when we monitor the plan, what we're also doing is we're making sure that we have all the documents, all the legal contracts put together. We're doing it on a regular basis. Once you memorize these 6 steps, ladies and gentlemen, you're home free. Because the 6 steps for the financial planning process will be the same 6 steps for the risk management process. If they break it down to insurance, they may be breaking it down and discuss in detail. They may break it down and discuss in detail what insurance you want and how they want to design it. The financial planning process is the same as the investment planning, estate planning, tax planning, employee benefit, retirement planning. It's all the same 6 steps. So once you remember Mirage spelled backwards, you're in very good shape. The risk management rules say, very important, we need to take care of the risks that have the highest potential for economic loss. That's called severity. We're not concerned about things that will happen all the time, because if things happen all the time, it's almost impossible to insure them because the premium is going to have to be so high. If things happen all the time, you may not want to get insurance. And the question is, what has high potential for great economic risk to you and your clients? Well, it says in liability situations, what if you're sued personally or your auto has a problem? What if your home has issues and it's destroyed? What about catastrophic medical bills, long-term disability, and of course death? All of these things are risk management and broad risks we have to worry about. Now, we can't solve all the problems. You can't insure for every little scratch and every little bruise and everything that you own. The HP 10B2 calculator is a wonderful tool. It's about $40 retail. If you went to certain stores that say, do you want our handy-dandy security blanket? It's $7 a year, which we prepay it for 3 years. So now you're taking a $40 item and you're basically paying 50% of it for some kind of insurance. Is it really worth it? A lot of us have insurance on our cell phones or mobile offices. Why? Because you don't want to have to spend the $600 to replace it. Then you find out, well, there's a $100 deductible, and you've been paying, what, $10 a month? You have to make your own personal choices. When we're talking about risk management, it's very important that you remember you do have choices. If I would not get the insurance plan at any store for $7 or $14 or $21 for a $40 or $50 or $60 item. I am not sure even about having the insurance for my phone, because the one time I needed the insurance for my phone, I found out it wasn't covered because it fell in the water. But on the other hand, if that calculator, you press the number 5 key and a 17-inch monitor pops up, and you press the number 9 key and a full keyboard pops up, and it's worth $12,000, you may want to buy for $500 a year or $50 a month the insurance premium if you're the one who's on the hook for that $10,000. So when you're analyzing these plans, it's a personal choice. It's also an economic choice. Now, the next several slides discusses the 4 or 5 ways, the 5 ways to take care of risk management. We can avoid the risk. How do we avoid the risk? Well, if you don't own a home, you can't worry about the market value going down. And you don't have to worry about fixing the hot water heater of the furnace if it goes out. If you don't build a swimming pool in your backyard, you never have to worry about somebody falling in, getting injured, or drowning. Obviously, if you don't drive a car, you never get into a car accident. And then you may or may not have to worry about a bus accident, but there's no guarantee you won't have some kind of an accident. It just says if you don't own a car, you won't have a car accident. If you don't participate in sports, you're never going to get injured playing sports. But that, again, doesn't mean you're not going to get injured. So one way of managing risk is to totally avoid it. Now, in addition to managing risk by avoiding it, sorry, I went to the wrong slide, we can retain some of the risk. That's called a deductible or a co-insurance or a self-insurance. We will retain the risk. How much pain are we willing to take? Well, on my condo insurance and my auto insurance, I'm willing to take the first $1,000. If I owned a hotel, a lot of times they know you're going to take, people are going to take some of their washcloths and towels. They just don't want them taking their $150 plush robes because they have a note in there that says, if you take our robe, we're going to charge you. For my co-insurance on my property or my auto, as I said, I have a $1,000 deductible. On my medical insurance, I have a $1,000 deductible because I'm not concerned personally about that first retention of $1,000. I'm concerned about $5,000 or $10,000. How do I reduce my risk? Well, maybe you put in a sprinkler system and a fire and burglar alarm system. Maybe you put in other situations of work for fire safety drills and making sure that the fire extinguishers work. Maybe you lose some weight, you quit smoking, you stop drinking, and you take at least one annual physical and go to the dentist once or twice a year. These are all ways of reducing the risk. I can share the risk. What does that mean? Well, in the Chicago area, there's a lot of park districts in the suburbs. And most of the time, the park districts know that somewhere along the line in a normal season, there may be some lightning and somebody can get injured by lightning, but they can't afford all the premiums themselves. So they share the risk with lots of other park districts saying, we know that somebody's probably going to either fall into a swimming pool or get struck by lightning. Let's put together our own risk-sharing situation so we can help manage our own risks. These are all viable ways of doing it. The most successful way is to transfer risk. Hold on to the amount of loss that you're willing to potentially absorb, that's a deductible, and transfer the rest. And you can use insurance to do that. If you think of hold harmless agreements, I have a swimming pool in my backyard and everybody that comes to the pool has to say, I'm not liable. That may sound good, but it may not always work 100%, but it does work. Farmers can hedge their crops into the cash and futures market so that those are all ways of transferring risk. Now I am on slide 26. I want to finish a few more items before I take a break. But my question is, are there any questions? Because I don't see any hands up or any questions coming in. Anybody? Okay, I don't see any, so I'm going to continue on. Slide number 27. Sorry, slide number 28. What are the guidelines for managing risk? Real simple. I just said it in more detail. Transfer it, avoid it, retain it. And it also says retain the risks of low severity and low frequency, because that means you're not going to have a lot of exposure. As I said, I don't go and insure the Hewlett-Packard financial calculator because it's about $40 I can afford to replace it. If it was my $10,000 hybrid calculator, I might consider it. If I travel a lot and I take my computer a lot, I might consider insurance for the computer. I actually was over here Field in December, and I was still collecting my stuff, and all of a sudden one of the baskets was gone and my iPad was gone with it. They went and looked at the video, because I was standing there complaining, where did this go? It was right here. And then they went back, and apparently somebody had picked up all of these trays before I finished emptying one of my trays. And they were able to find that on the TV or on the monitor of the tape. So we can insure risk, that's transferring it. We can avoid it. If you never go skiing down a ski slope, you're never going to break your leg. retain what you want to retain. And what you want to retain, it says high frequency makes the transfer too expensive. And low severity and low frequency is what you will probably want to look at for getting insurance. A couple more slides, I'm taking a break. It's important that you follow these next couple slides because they do tend to ask questions this way also. I've deliberately put up the pages in the Vaughan book, and I believe it's the right page. This may be a previous edition. So in the event I'm off a page, it's the same material. It says don't risk more than you can afford to lose. Too many people go and they decide that they can only afford to lose $1,000, but they're going to risk $1,500. It doesn't make sense. They do it in Las Vegas. They do it when they buy lottery tickets. Make sure you can afford your losses. Make sure if you buy stock, you can afford to lose some money. Consider the odds. If the odds are against you that there's a 100% chance you're going to lose your phone, you may not want to insure it because it's going to be too expensive. And it says don't risk a lot for a little, and that's where the matrix from the Vaughan book comes in. Again, around page 60, they have this chart up. If something is high frequency, it means it's going to happen a lot. Low frequency means it's going to happen occasionally. High severity means when it happens, it's going to cost you a lot of money and be very painful, either financially and or emotionally. Low severity means it's not going to be that painful. So on the next slide, I filled in the blanks for you. You want to avoid things that are highly avoid them if you can, high frequency, high severity. In terms of low frequency and high severity, if it doesn't happen very often, and it's painful if it does happen, you want to think about insurance, such as health insurance, life insurance, fire insurance for your home. It's not going to happen often, but it's going to be very painful. And obviously life insurance, you only die once. If it's low severity and high frequency, you either have to retain it or figure out a way to reduce it. And if it's low and low, it means if it happens, it doesn't matter because it's not going to cost you that much money. You can build it into a marketing budget. And if the financial risk isn't that great, it doesn't really matter. So all of these things, and again, the reason I put the charts up, it's in your textbook, is there was a question a while ago in our class, and I believe on the comprehensive, where they basically asked a question to see if you understood the definitions or they had you fill in the chart. I am going to take a 5-minute break, and we are then going to come back to slide number 35, I think it is. No, 33, 31. We're going to take a 5-minute break and then come back and talk about the definitions of insurance. And then we're going to go about 35 to 40 minutes, take another 5-minute break, and finish up. So I'm going to stop the recording right now. If anybody has any questions, text them to me. And we'll reconvene at 10 after the hour. Give me a check mark when you are in the classroom. 10 after the hour in 5 minutes. Thank you. Welcome back to the second part of February 12th session number 6 on the insurance industry. We talked about perils and risk perils and hazards. We talked about what's an insurable risk earlier. I do want to remind everybody that in the event you're having trouble printing out any of the assignments, the quizzes, or the midterm, download it first and then print it. Don't print directly from the link in the content area. Now, the next group of slides is going to be somewhat technical in terms of legal terms. I know we have some lawyers in the group, so if I'm missing something, let me know. Feel free to interrupt. And I want to say that when you get insurance, you're getting a contract. The contract is between you, the individual, and the insurance company. It's not between you, the individual, and the broker or representative that's providing that service. It's between you and the company. And the concept of insurance is to indemnify you for a loss. Now, that's to make you whole. It's to make you financially full. Granted, if someone passes away, as I said earlier, a spouse, a child, a parent, there's no way to really indemnify anybody for that loss because it's an emotional, very strong emotional, usually, loss. But the reason people have life insurance is because when people pass away, they leave others behind them that they have a responsibility for, and there may be need for capital, for income, for paying off debt. That's why you have life insurance, or to leave a legacy. So the purpose of indemnification is for the insurance company to provide the insured with a reimbursement for loss. But it's, again, when you talk about life insurance, you have to be a little more analytical. And it says not every loss can be covered because not every loss has a profit motive. And the insurance companies do realize that everything other than a life insurance has to have a specific finite dollar amount that's being insured. In terms of life insurance, it could be a situation where people are insuring future income. They're insuring to pay off debt. They're insuring to buy out a partner. But somewhere along the line, there is some kind of a economic dollar amount put to things there. In order to have indemnification, we have to have suffered some kind of a loss. If we don't have a loss, there's nothing that you can be made whole with. So when we're looking at indemnification, the insurance company says we need 4 items to be there. The first item is we have to have what's called an insurable interest. An insurable interest means that if someone passes away, you have an emotional loss, or you could have a financial loss for someone's death if they have been endowing a university or a business relationship, or a financial loss for your automobile, your home, or whatever. It has to have some kind of cash amount that's quantifiable. Sometimes you can have more than one insurance company involved and more than one insurance policy involved, but you can't be compensated for a greater amount than what something is worth on property casualty or for health or disability. For life insurance, it's not uncommon for people to have 5, 6, 7 different life insurance contracts that as things change in their life, they get more. And usually, for property casualty, health insurance, disability income, you're only going to be able to indemnify yourself for the loss. You're not going to be able to profit from it. If we're talking about the concept of subrogation, that means that you've been made whole by your insurance company and you give them the right to go and to another party or another insurance company for them to be made whole. Please be aware that the concept of insurable interest, when are you going to have a loss, actually comes up twice, differently. For property casualty, automobile, you have to be able to substantiate the loss at the time of underwriting when the policy was issued and at the time of the claim or when the loss occurs. At the time of underwriting when the policy is issued, and again at the time of the claim when the loss occurs. So if you think about it, actually it's the underwriting process, the policy is issued, there's a loss, and then you file the claim. It says, Mike sells his house to Rob. Upon the sale, Mike no longer has any insurable interest in the house because it's been transferred to Rob. If the house was sold on February 11th, and everything was closed on February 11th, as of February 12th, Mike has no more responsibility that if there's any loss to that house, there's a problem. So as of midnight that night, it's no longer Mike's financial responsibility. It might even be when they can substantiate the time of the loss, even if the insurance policy hasn't transferred yet. So a property, when the World Trade Center disaster happened, the company that owned the World Trade Center sold it in August or July to another entity. There were 38 or 48 different insurance companies that were involved in the risk management or risk insurance of that complex. All of the policies had not transferred. When the disaster happened with the terrorist attack, who had the financial loss? The current owner, not necessarily the owner on the policy. That's how you have to look at it. Who is the current owner when the loss occurs on property casualty that's going to have some kind of financial loss? Life insurance is a little different. Life insurance says we will have a financial loss, and we have to say we're going to have it at the time of underwriting only. Why is that? Jack and Jill can be happily married for 5 years. They get a life insurance policy on Jack and Jill. 7 years later, they've been married 12 years, they get divorced. They both, one decides that they're going to keep the policy in force on the other one. They had an insurable interest at the time of underwriting, so it's perfectly okay. Business owners, they have their partners or share corporate stock, and what happens is when the policy, they buy it, there's an insurable interest, they each will have some kind of economic loss. They retire, they sell their partnership, they can still keep the policy in force. Happens all the time. Slide number 36. Insurance is called a unilateral contract because once the contract is issued, only one party has to perform. The insurance company or the insurer has to perform and pay the legitimate claim when it comes due. Unilateral contract. So we need the concept of indemnity. Insurance is a unilateral contract. We have to remember when the insurance interest actually occurs. Property casualty is different than life insurance. An insurance policy can also be a contract of adhesion. A contract of adhesion, what does that mean? Well, a contract of adhesion says, the insurance company, have written the contract. I'm giving you, the insured or the applicant, the right to take it or leave it the way it's written. You don't get the right to enter any modifications like you would if you're trying to buy a house. You just either accept it or reject it. And if the contract is modified, the insurance company and you, the insured or the owner, have to, in writing, accept it, the modification. Otherwise, it's issued the way it is, and it's take it or leave it. Because it's a contract of adhesion, in the courts have usually ruled that the insurance company takes a second seat to the insured. So be aware of that. Waiver provisions. What does this mean? This says that in very rare circumstances can anything other than the contract itself be used as the legal document. So if somebody refuses to perform or refuses to pay the premium, what does the document say? The agent may not waive the contract provisions. That has to be done in writing by the company and by the insured. Slide 39. Insurance is called an aleatory contract. It's a contract of indemnity. It's a contract of adhesion. It's a contract of an aleatory contract. It's a unilateral contract. An aleatory contract says, I'm giving you X amount of dollars. Giving you X amount of dollars. What are you going to do with the X amount of dollars? Well, you're probably going to turn around and pay the premium. The premium is a small amount of what the death benefit is. Reuben pays 2 medical expense premiums totaling $1,200, suffers a heart attack. He has $3,000 worth of bills. The insurance company pays $300,000. Jack is 33 years old, buys $1 million 10-year term for $400 a year. Jack dies, the insurance company pays $1 million. That's an aleatory contract. Unequal amounts of money are going to be exchanged. Slide number 40. can a contract be rescinded once it's approved and once it's put in force? If you've tried to conceal something from the insurance company, if you have tried to defraud the insurance company, if both the insurance company and or you make a mistake, they can rescind it. Once in my career, I was doing a client a favor. His daughter was graduating college. He wanted her to get a health insurance plan. He didn't want a temporary plan. He wanted a Blue Cross type full insurance plan. He said, "Will you help me out?" I said, "I don't do a lot of health insurance, Jack, but of course I'm going to help you, but I don't have time to go to your home. Can your daughter come to my office?" And it was 50 miles from where they lived. He said, "What if you mail everything and do it over the phone, and then we'll just mail it back to you with a check?" I said, "Fine." So I asked every question over the phone. She filled it in. We discussed everything. She signed it, mailed it back to me with a check. About 13 months later, no, maybe not that far, maybe it was 10 months later, the insurance company sends me some forms to sign an affidavit asking me how this policy came into being. Did I ask all the questions myself? And on the application, when I sent it in, there was a note that said, I did it over the phone, asking each question in order, the client filled it out. And then the insurance company sent another letter that said, we are rescinding this contract. We're not reforming it, we're rescinding it as though it never happened. Because we found out that question 37B was improperly answered. They felt that the person was trying to defraud them, they just rescinded the contract. We can reform a contract. That means that in the event we need to modify it, we can do that if everybody agrees and signs the documentation, even if they need to increase the premium because maybe there was a mistake that occurred. So we can rescind it if there's fraud or the insurance company believes that they've been lied to or things have been concealed, or they can reform it if it's not as serious. In the case where they rescinded it, they felt that the young lady had lied to them, and she said she totally forgot about it. I can't tell you who's correct there. I know there's some attorneys in the room. I hope I'm going through this properly. If I'm not, let me know. The collateral source rule says that once we can measure damages by a third party, the plaintiff's liability should not be influenced. Somebody sent me a text message. If an insurance company rescinds a contract, does it make it more difficult for the individual to get insurance elsewhere? Yes. In the case of my client, the insurance company had sent a letter saying, you applied for this contract on such and such a date, you have paid a total of X amount of dollars in premium, we have paid Y amount of dollars in claims, we're giving you the difference. And this contract never existed. Well, there's a question on the application that says, have you ever had insurance declined, postponed, modified, or canceled? This became a canceled contract, and you have to explain why. Does that answer your question? I think it was Mary that sent it in. Thank you. You're welcome. So the collateral source rule says, Smith injures Jones in an auto accident. Jones is fully insured for disability and medical expenses all by himself on his own. He still can sue Smith because Smith was the one that influenced Jones. Next item. Brown injures a child in a sports-related accident. It's going to cost $1 million to care for the child, but Brown only has $300,000 of liability insurance. What happens if the jury awards $1 million? Well, the fact that you have insurance does not influence what the jury can award or whether there should be an award. So in this case, Mr. Brown is going to be having a partner for life for $700,000. Subrogation says, as I said earlier, that if we have a situation where I am made whole by my own insurance company, my insurance company can go back and claim against the other insurance company to try to make themselves whole, but they don't owe me the money. That's in the simplest part what subrogation is. The next couple slides deal with the parts of an insurance contract. Just so you know, I think there's a quiz question. I also think there's at least one question on the midterm. The main parts of the insurance contract would be the definitions, or what are we insuring? And the definitions now have to be in simple, ordinary language. We're insuring my condo at such and such an address for such and such an amount. We're insuring my home at such and such an address. Construction is brick. The home was built in 1970. It's on 1/3 of an acre. You know, what are we insuring? What are we promising? That's the agreement. We're promising for homeowners to pay for fire, theft, vandalism, and the extended other coverages. Very important, and I encourage you to go back to your homeowners, your auto, your health, your life, your disability, your policies, and see what's excluded. Those are the situations where claims won't be paid. After Hurricane Katrina, and I am not making light of Hurricane Katrina, many people lost their homes and lost everything and found out too late that they didn't have the right kind of insurance because they didn't have flood damage. And quite frankly, one of the questions you're going to be asked later on is, do homeowner policies usually have flood insurance? And the answer is no, because the insurance companies can't figure out a way to provide for flood insurance around the entire country and make it profitable for themselves and charge the right amount of premium. So that would be an exclusion. The condition section would be, what are the rights of the parties? What's the claim procedure? How do we get the money? What documentation do we have to give? All of these things are very, very important in order to follow up and follow through for the parts of an insurance contract. So we have the declaration page that explains what's insured, and then we have the definitions, and we have the insurance agreement, and the exclusions, and the conditions of when things are covered, and how you put in for coverage. Now, I'm going to try to do something I'm going to cover a little later in the class, and I don't know if I'm able to do this, because typically I've never been able to get this done right. So, let's talk about life insurance for a minute. Let's assume that this is a life insurance contract, the parties of a life insurance contract. So where do we fit in? Okay, right here we have the insured. We're going to call this A. The insured has a mortality. The insured is living, breathing, male or female, somebody that's alive. Right here in the middle, whoops, that's an interesting thing. I've never seen that happen before. Right here in the middle, we have the company. I don't know why this won't type down, but we'll figure it out. Maybe I'll do it over here. Okay, this isn't working out the way I wanted it to work out. So, draw a triangle, if you can, and then let's see if I can get this to work to my advantage. So, at the top of the triangle is the insured. On one side of the triangle, and if this doesn't work, is going to be the owner. And I'm actually going to do this again in class at a later time. So, no, forget it. I'm giving up. On one side of the contract, one side of this life insurance contract is going to be the insured. And the insured does not have to own the life insurance contract. The owning of a life insurance contract says someone owns it, someone has the rights of ownership. And we're going to go over this several times in the next several weeks. So whoever owns the contract says they're going to usually pay the premium, and they have certain financial incentives. They get to name the beneficiary. If they want, they get to change the beneficiary. If they want, they can access the cash value if there is any. They can make a loan against the policy if there is any cash, and they can assign it as a death benefit. The owner of the policy receives the dividends and can adjust the dividend payouts, and again can collateralize the policy. And the question is, when is there an insurable interest? When the insured dies, the beneficiary is believed to own the policy because in order to put the claim in, somebody has to own the policy. So the insured does not have to be the owner. Most of the time the insured is the owner. Sometimes the owner could be another person. Sometimes the owner can be an irrevocable life insurance trust. And that way, usually the owner and the beneficiary will be the same. And again, I'm doing this, and I'm going to do this whole thing about insurance again, but this has to do with something that you need to be aware of. The beneficiary is the person or group of people or the class of people that will receive the benefits when somebody dies. So Jack is the insured and the owner. Jill is the primary beneficiary. The children are the contingent beneficiaries. Al, I'll answer your question in a second. And if the primary beneficiary predeceases the insured, then the contingent beneficiaries move up in that class. The question that Al just asked is, I'm going to go back to this previous slide. It says the owner can be the insured, the owner can be the beneficiary, a trust can be the owner or the beneficiary, a business can be the owner or beneficiary. If it's a trust, it's usually an irrevocable life insurance trust, which means once the trust is in place, it doesn't change. If it's an irrevocable life insurance trust, the owner is probably best to have it owned by the insured at the time, or owned by the trust at the time of issue, because if not, and it's transferred into the trust after the policy is issued, what happens is the insurance, the IRS says that you transferred it in the anticipation of dying. Therefore, it reverts back to part of your estate for the first 3 years. If it's owned by the trust on the day it's issued, then you avoid that trap. Does that clarify your question, Al, or do you need me to go further? Okay. Again, I'm going to be discussing the trusts and all this a little bit later. This is just, again, I talked about the different classes of beneficiaries, and I can also discuss the difference between a revocable beneficiary, which says I, the owner, have the right to change it, and an irrevocable beneficiary, the owner has restrictions and can't change the beneficiary. Therefore, if you can't change the beneficiary and you want to borrow or do something on an irrevocable beneficiary, you have to turn around and get that person to agree to it. If I'm going too fast, let me know. How do you determine how much risk somebody's willing to take? You ask questions, open-ended questions. Jack and Jill, you're both working. Jill, you're a doctor, you're making $190,000 a year. Jack, you're an attorney making $175,000. If something were to happen to one of you, do you want to make sure all the student loans are paid for? Do you want to make sure all the mortgages and bills can be paid for if it's to your advantage? How much income do you need to replace? And then you quantify it. Well, how do you know? Well, Jack and Jill, in round numbers, you're making almost $400,000 as taxable income. And it looks to me, based upon what I've done, you're only saving about 5% of your income, including or 7%, including the money you're putting into your 401ks. So how much income do we need if something would happen to one of you? And then we can proceed and figure out what is their risk exposure. What's their risk exposure if they're disabled and they can't work because they still have student loans to pay and they still have to take care of their mortgage and putting food on the table? What's their risk exposure with their investments for their 401k? What happens if they have become sick? What if they have lost wages? All of these are exposures you have to determine is during the financial planning process and see if it's something you can insure. Superannuation is a term that's becoming more prevalent, which means we're living beyond our resources. That's a big fear baby boomers and people that are currently retired have, that they're going to live beyond the amount of money they have. Additional risk exposures. You might own property. Can it be destroyed in a flood? Can it be destroyed in a mudslide? Can you lose the value of the property in economic times? Can you get into an accident driving? Can somebody hurt you, kill you, ruin your car, ruin your business, drive through your home? What do you do about normal life activities? Not everything is intentional. How do you protect yourself from all kinds of unintentional things? Okay. I think what I'm going to do is turn the recording off and then start talking about some more legal terms and get through the last 25 slides. So I'm going to take, if you think you need more than a 1-minute break, give me a check mark. If I don't see enough check marks, I'm just going to turn this off. The third session for February 12th, the 6th overall session of this class is about to start. We're talking about some legal terms, and I'm going to discuss some terminology. Again, if any of the attorneys want to interject, feel free to do so. The terms we're going to talk about are torts, unintentional torts, intentional torts, negligence, attractive nuisance, different kinds of liability, different kinds of defenses. So, whoops, I think I went one too far. A tort is an act for which someone may be found liable. The courts may force liable parties to pay damages to the injured party. The liable party is known as a tortfeasor, or the defendant, and the injured party is the plaintiff. It says that a breach of contract is not considered a tortious act, but torts mean somebody has been injured. Now, a tort, my understanding is tortious behavior is between individuals. Criminal behavior would be between the government and an individual. There's a different burden and standard of proof between the government and individuals for criminal behavior than there would be for a tortious act. In fact, many of us remember probably the most famous case in recent times where we talked about a tortious act called for wrongful death, where the plaintiff or the defendant was found guilty, and the same defendant was found not guilty under the legal aspect of a criminal act. Again, the O.J. Simpson case. Businesses tend to have overlapping exposures. Workman's compensation, unemployment compensation, harassment, group insurance rates. So we have all kinds of things we need to understand the terminology. I'm not saying you should become an attorney. I'm saying you have to understand the terminology. An intentional tort would be listed as libel, whether it's written or published, slander, where it's a spoken defamation, assault, which is verbal, battery, which is physical, false arrest, invasion of privacy. All of these are listed as intentional torts. Unintentional torts would say, well, you're negligent. You didn't mean to really do it. You know, you were golfing and you didn't mean for that golf club to fly out of your hand and hit your golfing buddy in the head. You were golfing and you didn't mean for the golf ball to hit somebody. You were driving down an icy road. You didn't mean for the car to hit a patch of ice and spin out of control. So negligence says, did you exercise the proper amount of due care and caution? Because if you didn't exercise what's classified as reasonable care that a prudent person should have exercised, then you might be classified as negligent. Driving 70 miles an hour in a school zone isn't a good idea. Driving 35 miles an hour in a snowstorm or an ice storm is probably not a good idea. Negligence can occur in different circumstances in different ways. Something that the examination people like to ask questions on is what's called an attractive nuisance. You are guilty of negligence if you have what's called an attractive nuisance and don't properly take care of it. Attractive nuisance would be having a swimming pool in your backyard with no fence or unlocked gate. Having vacant land where children would play with all kinds of rusty items and glass items and things they can get hurt on without fencing it off. Having a construction zone with a 12-foot dugout for a basement or a foundation with no fence around it. These are all classified as attractive nuisances where children who do not have the same faculties allegedly to look at things realistically would then have a situation where they might want to do something. They're going to want to jump into a swimming pool. They're going to go play in a playground area or what they perceive to be a playground area. Negligence per se says, did you violate a standard of care that's been set by a statute, knowingly violate it? You're negligent. Again, driving in a school zone at 70 miles an hour, driving down the streets with a 35 mile an hour speed limit at 60 miles an hour in an ice storm, not properly doing construction, or trucks not properly sealing their cargo. All of this would be negligence per se. Driving hazardous material through certain areas. And if it's negligence per se, you're basically guilty. Absolute liability. You will be absolutely liable if you do something, even if you didn't do something deliberately, because you did certain things that exceeded what a reasonably prudent person would do, such as keeping exotic animals, in this case a tiger, and maybe you didn't have the tiger's cage with sealed enough. The bars were 3 inches apart where the paw could be pulled through, and a tiger could, reach somebody. Maybe you needed to have the tiger in a cage with mesh around the cage and the bars, and then have another set of bars. Maybe you needed a lid or a roof on the cage. Maybe you don't have explosives. Maybe you're not driving a cement truck around a curve at 70 miles an hour. All of these would make you absolutely liable. Strictly liable says you manufactured something, you're at fault. You're going to have to prove that you're not at fault in order to win. You're going to have to prove that you didn't do something wrong, such as when Firestone was selling defective belt tires that they knew about, or some of the drug companies with thalidomide in the 1950s and 60s and Vioxx more recently. They made something that people believed were, that they knew there were some dangers. Same thing with the cigarette companies and what went on. Where I'm at right now, there's a big storm coming in. If I lose connection, I will try to get back as quickly as I can. If I don't get back online, I will finish this just in case. I'm just giving you a heads up. I'm down south, not in Illinois, but there's ice, and now I can hear thunder and see lightning. Vicarious liability. What does this say? It says that, oops, somebody sent me a text message. Hold on a second. Absolute and strict are the same, but do they ask about both? Is this from Al? I think so. Okay. They may use the same terms interchangeably. So they may ask that this is a definition of one or the other. That's the best I can tell you. Thank you for pointing that out. Vicarious liability says, I'm the employer, I'm responsible for what my employees do because I'm responsible. Therefore, because of their negligent act, I'm liable. So it says the negligent actions of one person forces the other person to take care of it. You have an employee driving on a business errand, injures a pedestrian, the employer is liable. The same employee driving, even if they're driving the car on personal stuff, they may not be liable. Vicarious liability, I believe, also was the situation where Denny's had to pay, I think it was $80 million about 12 years ago because of one of their assistant managers was saying some very harsh racial comments to an off-duty deputy sheriff. And because the court said you didn't train, you didn't have anti-harassment education, you're liable. Is negligence a defense for what goes on? The law recognizes certain defenses that can eliminate or reduce the liability of the wrongdoer. Did I assume some risk? Did I contribute to the problem? Can some of that be blamed to me? Did I have an opportunity to avoid the situation? If the plaintiff understood the dangers associated with the activities and continued to pursue the activities, so maybe the injured party can't just say, I had nothing to do with it, that I'm owed everything. If I continue to play field hockey or ice hockey and the puck goes in to my teeth, or I'm sitting right at courtside and the players run into me and I get injured, or I'm sitting in the first row at a baseball game and a bat flies out of the player's hand. It wasn't deliberate and I assumed some of that risk. Did I contribute to the risk? Here they say Sally runs into Barry as he's jaywalking. Sluggo was driving after drinking 15 beers. Peter, who is sober, has an accident. Sluggo may have had his reaction time interfered with because of all the beers. Comparative negligence. Both of us have a problem. The court decides that each of us has some negligence, so therefore they may figure out the percentages and do it anywhere from 90-10 or whatever the numbers are, all the way down to 50-50, or they may just decide it's all 100% against one of the parties. Last clear chance defense says, did I have an opportunity to change or not do what was being said, or what was happening? Road rage, walking on railroad tracks, going around the crossing gate in my car. Any questions so far? Okay, all I'm going to do is stop the recording because I'm going to another topic and I just want to give you an opportunity to. Welcome to Session 4 of Unit 4 of Session 6, February 12, 2014. We're going to talk a little about life insurance and a few other general questions on underwriting, and then I'm going to do the review for the midterm. I am frequently asked, how do I help determine how much life insurance somebody needs? Most planners are asked that question, and it comes up in almost every financial plan I do for young couples. And it says, what does the survivor need for cash money? What does the survivor need for extra income? The insured already has $500,000 of insurance. Here they're just saying, if we do the numbers, we need another $500,000 of additional coverage. This is called needs analysis. Needs analysis is mentioned in your book, sometimes referred to as capital needs analysis. Now, I'm going to give you a hint. This is tested, and people miss it all the time because it's so easy to miss. We can use needs analysis and what's called capital preservation or capital retention. Capital retention says we don't want to spend down the principal. We want to keep the principal intact. We want to live off of the interest. And here it says the after-tax rate of return is 6% if we have enough money to invest. And we want to guarantee an income of $60,000 per year for the rest of Ann's life. Now, how do we figure out how much money we need? Well, remember the capitalization formula? We divide the interest rate into the income and we come up with $1 million. But why does it say we add back another $60,000? Because we want to preserve the capital. And let's assume for a minute Jack dies on January 1st. We need $60,000 of income right away. So we need $60,000 of income right away because we don't know how long it's going to take to get the money invested, to get the money from the insurance company, and to earn the interest. So we know that $1 million invested at 6% will always generate $60,000 a year. We also know Jack and Jill want $60,000 right at the beginning. So we have to add that back in. So we need $1,060,000. If we go back to the previous slide, we can combine this. We already have $500,000 of insurance. So how much more insurance do we need if we're trying to go back to the previous slide and figure out the same thing? Well, we need $560,000. You're going to get some kind of a question on this, and I cannot tell you how many times people miss it because they fail to remember and they fail to see that they need this extra $60,000. It just doesn't happen. I'm going too fast here, let me know. For disability, most insurance companies will insure up to 60%, maybe as much as 66% of your gross income. Gross income. Group plans usually have a maximum amount that they will insure. So it might be up to $5,000 a month. So let's say it's 60% up to $5,000 a month or $60,000. So that's roughly $100,000 of income. If your income is much greater, you may have to supplement that with your own. If your income is less, they're going to insure up to that 60 or 66%. Let's say the reason it's not 100% is simple. You're going to be paying taxes on some of this money, and if you're paying taxes on some of the money, then you're not netting out all the money because roughly a third of it's going for taxes. We can do long-term care analysis. How much benefit do we need is dependent on where you're living and how much it costs to be in a nursing home or have home health care. I use this as part of every financial plan if the people are over 50. On week 9, we're going to go over more of the disability, long-term care, and medical insurance. Week 10, we're going to talk about policy, property liability. There's different kinds of health insurance plans today. How much do we need? How much coverage do we want? We don't have to worry about limits any longer. We don't have to worry about uninsured claims because there's no longer a pre-existing condition. Sorry. Property insurance needs. You really want to try to get replacement value on your home and your auto. It's going to probably cost 10 or 15% more, but it gives you better coverage. We're going to be talking about this in week 10. Now, I'm frequently asked, if we're talking about it in week 10, why is it here? This is more like an overview in case people have questions about the rights of ownership, who owns what, who can claim, get the claims processed, and so forth. Slide number 74. Sometimes you want companies that specialize in the right kind of insurance, like health insurance or auto. Other kinds, so you just want a general company like Nationwide or Allstate or State Farm. Whatever you're doing, you want to just make sure that the company you have is strong and will be able to pay the claim. How long do you need the coverage for? Well, if you're 35 years old with 3 million kids, you probably need more life insurance than you can afford. You may want term insurance, and you may need some for 10 years and some for 20, and then you may want some other insurance. You may need some insurance for your jewelry or your work equipment. You may need some different kinds of insurance for your auto, your home, your jewelry, your fine arts. All of these will determine what your needs are. A lot of times as people get older, they don't need all the insurance. Important item. Participating means the insurance company, basically it's a participating company, which means it's a mutual company where the policyholders own the company and they will share in the dividends. A non-participating policy, the policy owners don't share in the dividends. It used to be you'd have a mutual company that only sold power insurance. You'd have a stock company that only sold non-participating insurance. Sometimes there was some overlap. We're going to talk about this in week 7 and 8, or session 7 and 8, sorry, 8 and 9. And the modified endowment contracts are really important to understand for the test and for tax purposes. And I think I owe you an apology. If I was referring to sessions, property casualty is session 12, health, long-term care disability would be session 11. I was talking about units 10, unit 9. Advanced life insurance will be unit 10, session 10, and the general life insurance will be 9 and 8. And next week we're going to be talking more about insurance companies. You have to understand that the National Association of Insurance Commissioners is an association of insurance commissioners that determine what kind of model legislation there should be, how policy should be analyzed, what should be disclosed, what's in the best interest of the public. The National Association of Insurance Commissioners is an association. It is not a legal entity. So who are members of that association? The insurance commissioners and insurance superintendents of the 50 states. As a CFP, you have to help your clients choose a life insurance company and any insurance company that makes sense, has strong ratings, and you really want to try to keep them in the top 3 rating categories. Look in the Vaughan book for Moody's, Standard & Poor's, Duff & Phelps, AM Best, Weiss. These are all rating companies, and you can see what kind of benefits they have. You don't want to put your clients in lower rated companies because you may have liability and they may not be around to pay the claim. This slide sort of explains the different rating services. There's a better definition in your textbook. And underwriting is the process that begins when you take an application. The insurance companies want to avoid adverse selection, which means they don't want to guarantee they're going to pay a claim. They want to have some modicum of making sure that they don't have to pay a claim, but there's some chance involved. Okay, I have honestly never covered all this material in an hour and a half. Part of it is I don't see a lot of questions. So let's take a minute and see if anybody has any questions. I see all of you are still online, and I am going to do a short review for the midterm. Any questions? I don't see any hands raised. I don't see any questions coming in. Okay. It is your responsibility to make sure all the quizzes are due on time. By the end of this week, please make sure you are done with at least the first 4 quizzes. Hope somebody has a question. Let me see what it is. Lisa, I don't see a text message with a question. Lisa? Can you hear me or text me? Thank you, Carol. I don't know why I couldn't hear her. Okay, hold on a minute. Okay. How do you get access to the rating company's ratings? You can probably Google them and go to any insurance company and they will now put all the ratings online. You probably could go to the different companies themselves and see what the ratings are. There's actually a computer program that somebody's put together where they've taken numerical counting 0 through 100, and they've taken all the rating factors and they've put it to numbers. Some of the firms do charge to get into their rating system. If, let's say, I wanted to find out what ratings Howard's International Widget Insurance Company had, I would start by going to the company's website and look for the ratings. And yes, they do change, and companies do, as a matter of fact, some of the professional journals do have updates where they say, you know, rating changes, both positive and negative, and they'll list them. Does that help you, Lisa? I don't know if it does because I didn't get any answer. The only check mark I see is from, well, let me see now. Okay, Lisa, did I answer all your questions or do I have to go back? I don't know if that's still Lisa who said that you sent me the math worksheet but didn't get my response. Resend it then to MarketBear, MKTBEAR, at yahoo.com. We don't have to show the keystrokes for the time value worksheet. I prefer the keystrokes, but if you already have, if you just made your own little worksheet that has the answers, send it to me. Either way, I'm going to accept it. You can email it. You can fax it to my office. My fax number is, let me see, I'm going to put this up, 847-803-0011. And my email address is marketbear@yahoo.com. If you're faxing it, I'm not going to get it till Monday, but till Friday. But I will email you. I will email the answers as soon as I know you have done the work and I've checked it over quickly. I'm not grading it, I'm just checking it over. Because it's not fair to the people that have a finance background. I actually had to reroute my flights because Atlanta's closed already, and I'm hoping I'll get out tomorrow. That's why I can't promise to get the answers. If you scan it and email it to me, I should be able to send it via my computer. If not, if it goes to my office, I'm going to have to wait till I get there on Friday. Any other questions about ratings, about the time value of money, about anything else? Okay. The midterm. The midterm is 50 questions. Somebody said they tried the archive on for Monday. It didn't work. I was told it was up late this afternoon. It just took a long time to load. If there's a problem getting to the archive, please contact Dorothy tomorrow because I hopefully will be in transit. I won't be able to answer it. But I do know that it's up there. And sometimes it takes a little longer than other times. The midterm is 50 questions. It's all multiple choice. Approximately 12 to 13 questions will be calculations from very easy to more complicated. The other say 37 questions, 38 to 40 questions, are pretty much equally distributed among the first of the other 4 units. And there will be a couple questions, I think, from tonight, and there may be 1 question from Monday night. But it's an open note, open book exam. So you have the right to look at all of your notes, all of the quizzes. And as I said, if you download it, you should be and put it on your computer or in your Dropbox. You should be able to print it out, do the test as a closed note, closed book exam, then go over the test, question by question, and move on from there. So allow yourself 2 to 3 hours to do it as a closed note exam. Don't take more than 3 hours. And then take a break and start going through it. Because this is the online class where we're meeting Monday and Wednesday, I don't think it's fair to say you only have 1 week to do the exam. So you're getting the exam tonight. You have this whole weekend and the following weekend. The exam will be due by noon on Monday, the 24th. All of your quizzes should be up to date by that same time. I will go over some of the, if you have questions after you, on any of the midterms, please send me an email so I make sure I cover what you want me to cover. I'm going to cover some of it on the 24th and some of it on the 26th, depending on how many questions we have. I am not going to go through each and every question because you will be getting the answers and the rationale already. The test, again, 12 or 13 problems for time value of money. The balance is pretty much evenly distributed from each of the units and the corresponding chapters. There are a couple questions that are write-off quizzes. I think there's 1 question, I know there's a couple questions on time value of money off the quizzes and a couple other questions right off the quizzes. I've given you a lot of hints on what to expect. I don't think there was a slide that talked about types of ownership in terms of tenants in common, joint tenancy with rights of survivorship, tenancy by the entirety, but definitely look that up before the midterm. Any questions? Okay. I don't want to leave until I make sure I've answered everybody's question. So what I'd like you to do is if you don't leave the room yet. If you don't have a question, give me an X mark. If you do have a question, put a check mark there. That way everybody gets to hear any questions you have. Lisa, I don't know if you're having trouble, or maybe you're just listening online. Okay, Lisa, you have a question? Please send it in. When you take the midterm, you will get the grade immediately, and I will also then see each person's work. I have been, as I said, I had to go out of town at the last minute on business. I have not gotten into the discussion boards since I left on Monday evening. Okay, nobody has a question, so I'm just going to review. The midterm is a 50-question, multiple choice exam, A, B, C, and D. Take it as a closed note, closed book exam, then go back and check your work. Also, it is due by noon on the 24th, which my understanding is the computer will not accept it if it's after 12 noon on the 24th. Okay, I'm going to shut off the recording. It's about 8:15.